Who goes there? Friend or foe? It's the classic challenge, a question that sentries have been shouting into the dark for centuries. But what happens when you get the answer wrong? We're going to dig into this 1993 congressional report, which reveals that friendly fire is one of the most tragic and oldest problems in warfare. So let's see what they found.
Let's just start with the number that really put this whole issue under a microscope for the modern military: 24%. In the Persian Gulf War, almost a quarter of all U.S. combat deaths were caused by friendly fire. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That is an absolutely staggering number.
And right away, that leads you to the big question, the one that's almost impossible to wrap your head around. How? How can soldiers with so much training, with all this advanced equipment, make a mistake that catastrophic? Well, as this report shows, the answers are way more complicated than you might think.
To really get this, we have to understand that this is not a new problem. This isn't just about high-speed jets and fancy tanks. The official term for it is fratricide, and it is a ghost that has haunted basically every battlefield in history. It's as old as war itself.
The report just lays out how timeless this is. I mean, look at this. We're talking 1758. A young Colonel George Washington's troops end up fighting another friendly unit in the fog. Fast forward to World War II at Guadalcanal, where a sinking American destroyer's own depth charges kill its surviving crew who are in the water. And then, in Normandy, during this massive bombing run called Operation Cobra, Allied planes trying to hit German lines ended up bombing their own guys.
And here, we get this really visceral, first-hand account from the legendary war correspondent Ernie Pyle, who was actually there for Operation Cobra. He talks about this dawning horror, this suspicion that the bombers way up in the sky were aiming for a smoke line that the wind was slowly blowing back over their own heads. You can just feel the total chaos and helplessness in his words.
So we've seen the history, but now let's zoom all the way in, right down to the individual level. Because at the end of the day, these tragedies happen when one person has to make a life-or-death decision in a blink of an eye. We really have to get inside their head to understand what's going on.
So what is going through a soldier's mind in that moment? Well, the report pretty much boils it down to this. The more danger you feel, the more urgent it becomes to shoot first. It's a direct relationship. As the threat goes up, you become more, trigger happy. You just don't need as much proof to pull the trigger when you feel like your own life is on the line. And in that kind of high-stress situation, some ambiguous target out there, it doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. It's probably hostile.
And check this out, because this slide shows how that psychology gets written into the actual rules of engagement. If you're defending, say, an aircraft carrier, a single incredibly valuable thing, the rule is simple. Any unknown aircraft coming at you is treated as hostile until it proves it's friendly. But on a huge, chaotic battlefield with friendlies all over the place, the rule completely flips. Now, an unknown target is assumed to be friendly unless you have a good reason to think it's hostile. The whole risk calculation changes depending on where you are.
All right, let's put you in the hot seat for a second. Imagine you're a tank commander. An unknown vehicle suddenly appears over a ridge. You know that in a tank battle, whoever shoots first wins, period. If you hesitate, even for a heartbeat, you and your whole crew could be gone. So, what do you do?
Okay, so with all this intense human pressure, the obvious question is, right, can't we just use technology to solve this? Can we build something that takes all that deadly guesswork out of the picture? And as the report gets into, that's exactly what the military has been trying to do for a very, very long time.
The key piece of tech here is called IFF. It stands for identification, friend or foe. And the basic idea is to use electronic signals to automatically tell the good guys from the bad guys.
Now, there are really two ways you can do this. The first is what's called a cooperative system. Think of it like an electronic secret handshake. One vehicle sends out a challenge, like a question, and a friendly vehicle that has the right gear, a transponder, sends back the secret password. The other approach is non-cooperative. This is more like detective work. The system tries to identify a target based on its unique features, like the exact shape of its radar echo or the sound of its engine, without needing the target to do anything at all.
So here's how that secret handshake works in the real world. According to the report, the Army's near-term fix is this question-and-answer system. A tank points its gun at a target and shoots out a very narrow radio beam. If that beam hits another friendly vehicle, its transponder instantly and automatically sends back an encrypted message that says, "Hey, I'm a friend." Now here's the key part. If no valid answer comes back, the target is still just unidentified. It's not confirmed hostile.
It's just not confirmed friendly, and that's a huge distinction.
And then on the non-cooperative side, you get into some really futuristic-sounding stuff. The report talks about things like high-resolution radar. The idea here is to make a radar so powerful that it can create a unique signature for every single type of aircraft out there, almost like a fingerprint. So instead of seeing a generic blip on a screen, the system would see a detailed 3D profile and instantly check it against a library of known friendly and enemy planes.
So you'd think, okay, problem solved, right? We've got the tech. But here's the twist. The report makes it crystal clear that even with perfect technology, you haven't solved the problem. Because the core issue isn't just about identification. It's about judgment. It's about what a human being decides to do with that information.
And that brings us to what might just be an impossible trade-off, this fundamental conflict that's right at the heart of the whole issue, the clash between keeping your own forces safe and making sure they can still fight effectively.
Okay, now this chart from the report, this is basically the climax of the whole story. It lays out the dilemma perfectly. Look, as you make the rules for engagement stricter to prevent friendly fire, yeah, those losses go down. That makes sense. But watch what can happen to the line for total losses. It can actually start to go back up. Why? Hesitation. If the rules are too strict, soldiers hesitate. That hesitation gives the enemy a split-second advantage, and you can end up losing more troops to the enemy than you save from friendly fire. It's a brutal calculation. And don't think for a second this is just a theory. The report brings up a real-world claim from the Gulf War. The allegation was that because the IFF rules were so strict, an Iraqi fighter jet couldn't be positively identified as an enemy, so it was allowed to fly away. And later, that same jet shot down an American plane. It's that nightmare trade-off scenario playing out for real.
So where does that leave us? It leaves us with this final nagging question. Better technology can definitely help. Better training can sharpen judgment. But in the absolute chaos, the fear, the confusion of battle, what everyone calls the fog of war, can we ever really get rid of the doubt that causes these tragedies in the first place? And that's a question that, decades after this report came out, is still being wrestled with on battlefields today.